I'm Tom Layson, and this is a Northwest Now Digital Extra. So-called deaths of despair are surging as job losses, isolation, illness, and COVID losses contribute to a major mental health crisis and an associated surge in substance abuse deaths from overdose. Nationally, overdose deaths topped 100,000 for the first time in 2021. That's more than car crashes and shootings combined. But there's an interesting twist in all this. The power of vaccinations to save lives and improve public health has been front and center the past 2 years with COVID. So wouldn't it be wonderful if there were, say, a vaccine against opioid addiction? Well, at the University of Washington, that's exactly what they're working on. Marco Pravatoni was happy enough in his University of Minneapolis lab, studying the mechanics of addiction. But his interest was also to push past mere understanding and into beneficial treatments. So, when the UW's Garvey Brain Institute endowed a new medication development research center, Pravatoni was recruited to lead the search for new medications to kill addiction.
My original training, I was an addiction scientist. That I started, during my PhD, I studied addiction, I studied mechanism of addiction, but I was not satisfied because even if we study addiction, we don't really study how to cure opioid use disorders or prevent overdose. And so that kind of drove me into medication development, and it's something that I'm very passionate about.
Pravatoni's lab just opened in January, and while still small, he says it's a unique opportunity to combine lab facilities with UW's robust clinical resources in medicine and psychiatry. An oxycodone vaccine has been in development for 10 years, and now it's currently in phase 1 of human safety trials. The hope is new vaccines will kill the euphoric addictiveness of illicit drugs, but at the same time not interfere with beneficial opioid treatments.
And the way that this type of vaccines are different from, let's say, infectious disease is that the vaccine, is just like any vaccine, will be injected in patients, like in your shoulder with a syringe, and the patient's body will develop antibodies that are specific and selective for the target opioid. So, for example, a vaccine against fentanyl will trigger the body to produce antibodies against fentanyl and possibly some related compounds like carfentanil or sufentanil. But these antibodies will not bind methadone, buprenorphine, naloxone, which is the active ingredient of Narcan, so that patients are protected against fentanyl, for instance, but they can still receive treatment in the form of FDA-approved medications, or for example, if they have to have a surgery, they could still use anesthetics or painkillers that allow them to be safely treated for either their addiction or for pain management or for critical care.
Of course, vaccinated addicts might try to switch drugs, but the hope is that subsequent generations of vaccines will be effective across a broad spectrum of opioids. So Pravatoni is hoping to leverage public-private partnerships to raise the hundreds of millions of dollars necessary to bring vaccines to market and reduce development times. His stretch goal right now is to get into human trials for a fentanyl vaccine in 2 to 3 years.
My part is essentially trying to keep moving the science forward, going to phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials, but also I spend a lot of time talking with potential investors, potential pharmaceutical company partners, or other private, let's say, equity stockholders that could actually move the needles toward commercialization. And that's pretty much the only way to get a vaccine like this to essentially the pharmacy shelf, so that the physician can prescribe to patients.
To see our full discussion about the surge in drug overdose deaths, be sure to look in the Northwest Now digital section of kbtc.org. Northwest Now airs Friday nights at 7:30 right here on KBTC, and be sure to look for more stories like this one by following us on Facebook and Twitter at Northwest Now.